don't know what to call her. Pace car. Pam has a very expressive face, and so I kind of use Pam as a gauge. Like, okay, how's comprehension going? Did I communicate that well? Did I like? I don't know if you guys see this. Certain people I look at that kind of give me, okay, pulse check. How are we doing? So without Pam, I'm going to be a little bit lost here this morning. So I'm going to need like extra expressiveness from the rest of you guys. So, like big eyes, furrowed brows. I need something. What?
Do you want to like the Japanese theater?
I think so. Caleb's got quite a bit more. What's that?
Overexpression, like the Japanese Noah theater.
Yeah, something like that. Well, that's what I need. Yeah.
Very expressive.
Go with that. All right. That said, we are going to keep on going in the book of Romans. Continuing forward, we're in chapter 2 today. We get about halfway through chapter 2. And we're continuing on. Paul had said earlier, he's like, this gospel that I have, this good news that I'm proclaiming, it's good news. It's about Jesus. Oh, I lost my thing here. This good news tells us how God makes us right in His sight. This is accomplished from start to finish by faith. As the Scriptures say, it is through faith that a person has life. This good news makes us right, tells us how we can be made right with God in His sight. He started off by saying we're not right with God in His sight. That's our starting point. And he's starting his explanation of the gospel. And last week he was talking about a group of people. I was calling them the lower light level people, or people that, if you wanted to put a classification to different segments of society, say, okay, these are probably the most clueless, most ignorant. If anyone could say, yeah, I don't have any idea who God is or what's going on. I don't even know. Be this group of people. So, okay, well, let's look at that group of people. Let's talk about that. Paul said that God's wrath is upon those who have rejected Him and turned from Him. But what about the innocent, ignorant people who just never knew Him to begin with? What did Paul say about that group of people last week in chapter 1?
No excuse for not knowing God.
There's no excuse for not knowing God. Any other thoughts about that? There's an inherent knowledge, right? It's written within them, is how it's described. That the truth of God is within them. It's there, innate, like an instinctual knowledge. We have a God-shaped hole in the human heart. That's a biblical principle. God says, no, I know how I made you. I made you needing me, and you're cut off from me, and I know you know that. Like, I know that's there, and I know that there is this thing within you saying, there's more. And yet, those innocent, ignorant people, what about them? Paul would say, no, there's not innocent, ignorant people. That doesn't exist. We would say, well, what about the innocent, ignorant people? Paul says, no, there isn't. There aren't ignorant, innocent people. That's not a segment of humanity, because all people have an innate knowledge of God, and therefore you're not innocent and ignorant. Here's the words that he uses. They've suppressed the truth. They knew God. They traded the truth for a lie, right? No, you aren't innocent in your ignorance. You had something that then you got rid of. You're in denial of what you know to be true. That's how Paul labels that group of people. So we'd say, oh, what about the innocent, ignorant? Paul said, no, they're not innocent and ignorant. God has, and again, this is a worldview formulating principle. This is how God is describing humanity through Paul. This is how I view humanity. God says, God who made us and knows what is true of us. No one is innocent before me in their ignorance. No, you're actually guilty. And you've chosen ignorance. It's a willful ignorance. There's things in nature. First, you have the innate knowledge that I put in you. There's also nature screaming these invisible attributes of myself to you. And you're also like, la, 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 I don't know anything. He's like, no, I know you're doing that. Like a little kid does that. La, 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 I can't hear you. They're only doing that because he's like, no, I know that you're speaking and I don't want to hear you. Therefore, now I can't hear you, right? He's like, that's what you're doing. That's what this group of humanity is doing. And so they're guilty. It says they have no excuse for not knowing me. That's how Paul describes this group of people. He also said in last week's passage 3 times that God abandoned these people. What is the nature of this abandonment? Do you remember? 3 times. So God abandoned them. How did that work?
Sort of to their own desires, to their own, like, okay, go do your own thing.
Yeah. God allowed man to fully and freely pursue life apart from Him. Man has embraced sin and is swimming in the consequences of those choices. That's what God abandoned meant. You really want, like we said, like that little toddler that's like, I want to touch a thing, I want to touch it. No, don't do it. It's not going to be good for you. It's going to be bad. Don't do it. Don't do it. Fine. Ah! And he gets hurt. Oh, Dad, why'd you do that? I didn't know. I just let you do what you wanted. So we're seeing in man, like, oh, but look at man without God, and there's suffering, and there's all of this. It's like, yeah, that's what you asked for. You wanted the freedom, like you wanted to run away from me, and you did. And look, it's a disaster. I'm like, oh, God must be mean because X, Y, Z. It's like, no, no, this is you. This is all you people. You're the ones that have embraced this, and look at the consequences that's going on. I've abandoned you to that. Your punishment is getting what you want. That's what's happening with that group of people.
They claim to be wise, too. That was another thing Paul said. They claim to be wise.
Right. There's all sorts of things. Yeah, that group of people. And again, I would say, I think, this is just me speculating, I guess, if you were to look around at most of humanity, you'd say if this group of people even does exist, it's a very, very small group of people. Most of humanity is going to fall into this next category that we're going to look at today, or possibly the one after. That's almost like, okay, if we can just try to imagine, is there someone in the world who is just, again, innocently out there just wanting God but can't find him? He's like, no, there's not. They've rejected me, and now they're like pushing me away. That's what's happening in that situation. So today, so there's the question. He says, hey, these guys have embraced, and he lists a ton of sins. Like, because they've rejected the truth that I've given them, they've embraced, and he lists off like 15 different sinful things. Like, this is what their lives are characterized by. This. So then there's the natural question, or the natural step, like, hold on. I hear what you're saying, Paul, but I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not condoning all the behaviors and the conduct that you're saying. Yes, I agree with God that such people are evil. Surely that separates me from them. Paul, you're describing a group of people who like love sin, but I don't. I'm like, no, that's bad. Those people you're describing are wrong, Paul. Don't lump me in with them. It's like, well, good. Let's talk to you now, Seth. Let's talk to this group of people who's able to sit back and say, oh, that's a group of people that are transgressing against God, and I can recognize that, and I'm able to say, that's wrong what they're doing. Therefore, I'm not that group. Paul says, okay, well, let's talk about you then. Let's talk about the moralist, the person with a moral, ethical code, right? I'm a good person. I can recognize good and evil, and I'm doing that actively. All right, so here's the passage. Romans 2, we'll read 1 through 4 to start. So we just finished. They know God's justice requires that those who do these things deserve to die, yet they do them anyway. Worse yet, they encourage others to do them too. You may think you can condemn such people, but you are just as bad, and you have no excuse. When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you are condemning yourself. For you who judge others do these very same things. And we know that God, in his justice, will punish anyone who does such things. Since you judge others for doing these things, why do you think you can avoid God's judgment when you do the same things? Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that his kindness is intended to turn you from your sin? So a group of people, they're acknowledging sin, like, oh, but no, I recognize good and evil. I'm in agreement with God about this. Like, well, there's no merit to that. Acknowledging sin and evil is no great boast if you still do the sin and the evil. Like, oh, I recognize that people who view pornography and engage in that are doing something evil. It's like, oh, good for you. Have you? Oh. It's like, so the fact that you're able to point and say that it's wrong doesn't really mean anything because you're doing all the same stuff too. And you could list off the whole list of sins you just put there. Oh, yeah, those people are greedy. Those people are hateful. Those people envy. Those people murder. Those people quarrel. Those people engage in deception. He's like, and they're evil, right? Yeah, they're totally evil. Have you done those things? Well, yeah. So, where is your moral superiority here? The fact that you're able to condemn it doesn't mean anything because you still do it. You're still just as guilty. Technically, you could say like more guilty, right? Because you have like a specific awareness of these things, you could say. When we were anthropologists just do this, but when we worked among the Iski, it was an interesting study to go into their culture, and we're asking them, it's called the ideal versus the real. You go and you ask the people and say, hey, what is a good Iski person? What is goodness in this culture? And so they would say things. Oh, a good Iski person he's very peaceful. He's harmonious. He's not going to fight. He's not going to raise his voice. He's not going to yell at his kids. He's not going to hit his wife. That's a good Iski person. He's going to be very generous. He's going to give to his neighbors. He's going to give to his family. He's going to be someone that is always looking out for the needs of others. There's going to be no illicit sexual activity. That's a good Iski person. He's going to control their desires, and they're going to keep that in place. They're going to be respectful of their elders. We're going to be very group-minded, right? They're going to be looking out for the needs of the clan, of the group. That's a good Iski person. They list off all these things. Like, oh, awesome. Do you do that? Well, no. Here's what good is. I have a sense of morality, but I also don't do it. I try, but no, I don't. What about that guy? Well, he does like this one, but he's totally lost his cool. He beat his wife 10 times. But he's a good gardener, you know. So he's like, there's the give and take. Everyone has this moral standard that we can acknowledge. Oh, there is good and there's evil, but we're not measuring up to it. It's like, oh, knowledge of what's right is not meritorious. There's no like, oh, good for you. It's like, no, you're still not doing it. Invariably, people violate what they believe to be right. We may feel superior in condemning the sins of others, but we're still just as guilty. That's what he describes there in verse 1, right? When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you are condemning yourself. For you who judge others do these very same things. It's worth noting, too, just in this, because this is a relatable passage we're going through. This is like most of societies. People that would label themselves not religious completely fit into this. Not religious, but I'm a good, I'm a good person. Like, I know how to conduct myself properly. Type of thing. It's worth noting, typically, what we would focus our judgment on, just the way that this works out, is usually what we'll judge are the sins that we're a little bit more removed from, right? There's look at that person is doing is so bad, and I would never do that. Yeah, I do this, but come on, it's not that. It's not that guy. It can get comical at times, right? I told you I did prison ministry for a while when I was younger. So you get with people and they're like, well, sure, I've robbed several stores at gunpoint, but I never sold crack to children. And they go, well, I sold crack to children, but I never. And it's like, what is this? That's what Paul's kind of describing here. The fact that you can point out other people's sins that's not showing any merit. You're just as guilty. Like, you're all guilty pointing at everybody else's guilt. Like, there's no benefit to that. You're not somehow like, oh, look, I'm on the side of God now, right? There's those people who love sin, and then there's me and God who don't. It's like, yeah, but you still do it. You're still doing the thing. And so, no, you're in exactly the same camp as these other people, even though you feel better about yourself, because you kind of convince yourself.
So it's kind of the idea of we compare ourselves to the lowest rather than the highest, and then we feel better about where we're at.
We can do that. It can manifest itself in different ways. But anyone who's acknowledging that right and wrong is a thing, and says, yeah, see, I can tell the difference between right and wrong, and that elevates me, he's like, no, it actually just condemns you even more. Because you'll never live up to that standard yourself. And then in verse 2, he says, and we know that God, in his justice, will punish anyone who does such things. So it's like, okay, here's the standard. People who do these things are worthy of punishment. So agreeing with God that people who do these things are worthy of punishment, again, is not meritorious if you're still doing the things. It still puts you on the side of deserving of punishment. Like, again, the finger pointing is just silly. He's like, it's a silly thing that you're doing here. It doesn't make sense. God is just and will punish sin. Other people's sins may bother us more than our own, but it all deserves God's wrath. Since you judge others for doing these things, why do you think you can avoid God's judgment when you do the same things? Doesn't make sense. So there's an element of here, right? We know that God, in his justice, will punish anyone who does such things. The justice of God says God is going to be fair in this situation. God is going to be consistent and just, right? He's going to do what is supposed to be done. Sin deserves punishment. God is just. He will punish sin regardless of how you've kind of finagled yourself, like, well, yeah, but it wasn't that sin, right? So if we, in our household, this is a hypothetical, this has not happened, so children, don't be embarrassed, but in this hypothetical thing, in our household, one of the consequences that comes up if family rules are disobeyed is a loss of game time, right? There's a certain amount of video game time that the kids are allowed each week, and if there's significant defiance or breaking of family rules, you'll lose some game time. Hey, you had an hour of game time that's going to happen on Saturday? Yeah, you just lost that. That's not happening to you because of an infraction, right? So imagine the situation. One of our other family rules is you don't hit in anger, right? You're not allowed to be hitting your brother. In play, we're okay with that because we have boys, so we do that. But you don't hit in anger. So imagine there's a tension. Hey, this is my toy. No, I want to use the toy. And one of the kids, open hand, slaps the other. Bam! The other kid's like, I can't believe you just did that. And he closed-fisted punches the other in the belly. And then I come in, and they're going to argue with each other. Hey, he slapped me. He shouldn't get any game time. Well, he punched me. He shouldn't get any game time. A just officiant, a just judge would say, who's not getting any game time? Both of them. You're both not getting any game time. Well, yeah, but I only slapped him. He punched me. Well, he slapped me unprovoked. I just retaliated. You're both wrong. You're both losing your game time. Again, this didn't happen. But right, God's like, this is how God is dealing with this, with justice. And so, moralist, there's nothing here for you. You're trying to make a defense for yourself. There is no defense. He slapped me, so I hit him. Punish him. No, I'm punishing both of you. Like you're both equally condemned here. You're both getting punished here. You're both losing your game time. And then he says here, in case they're getting confused, don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that his kindness is intended to turn you from your sin? The lack of wrath you guys are experiencing right now is not a sign of your innocence. Don't you realize that there is punishment coming for you, and God's giving you time to realize these things? Hey, look, I'm right before God because look, I'm not experiencing wrath right now. No, don't misinterpret the grace that's being shown to you right now. You're being given time to understand how bad off you are. Don't spend it getting up on your high horse and pointing at other people and saying, at least I'm not that, at least I'm not that. Oh, look at me, I do good things. No, that's silliness. That you're misusing this time period that God has given you. That's not how this works. Can't you see this kindness is intended to turn you from your sin, not make you feel okay about it, not make you think somehow like you're superior? You are not good. You're in desperate need of outside help. God is giving you a chance to turn to him. Let's moralist, people who feel morally superior, let's get on the same page with God here. That's not right. Verse 5. But because you are stubborn and because you are stubborn and refuse to turn from your sin, you are storing up terrible punishment for yourself. For a day of anger is coming when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. He will judge everyone according to what they have done. He will give eternal life to those who keep on doing good, seeking after the glory and honor and immortality that God offers. But he will pour out his anger and wrath on those who live for themselves, who refuse to obey the truth and instead live lives of wickedness. There will be trouble and calamity for everyone who keeps on doing what is evil, for the Jew first and also for the Gentile. But there will be glory and honor and peace from God for all who do good, for the Jew first and also for the Gentile. For God does not show favoritism. Those who are depending on their own moral worth to be right with God are storing up terrible punishment for themselves. Because you are stubborn, you refuse to turn from your sin, you are storing up terrible punishment for yourself. So if you're standing there thinking, I'm better than this person because I'm in agreement with God about what's right and what's wrong, he's saying, yes, but you're still doing what's wrong. And so you're thinking you're like moving towards God, and actually what you're doing is just storing up punishment for yourself because you're depending on your goodness to merit like a right relationship with God. He's saying what that's doing when it comes due, there's punishment. All you're doing is storing up punishment because you don't have anything to offer. You have nothing of consequence in a good way to bring to this discussion when you stand before God. And then when this judgment comes, you're just guilty. You're guilty of all the things you did. We have, in America, it's really common, but it's kind of like worldwide, this idea of teeter-totter theology, right? There's a balance, and if I do something bad, I need to counterbalance that with something good, right? So the child smacks his brother, and he's like, oh no! And then he picks a flower for his mom, right? And now it's like nothing happened, right? I've balanced, I've equaled it out, so now it's like a net neutral. God's like, no, you're storing up wrath for yourself. God's like, you smacked your brother. The flower doesn't play into this at all. That's not part of the discussion. But no. There you go. You smacked your brother. Now let's add to it the next day. Now you cussed out this person. Okay, there's that. All you're doing is storing up bad. This idea of like, oh, I'll negate it with good things. Like, that's just made up. That's not a thing. That's not what Paul describes here. No, when you're pointing fingers and agreeing with God about sin and still doing the sin, all you're doing is storing up sin. That's all that's happening here. That there's no benefit to you in this idea.
Is that?
Yeah, Mom.
Something hit me about that. Maybe because of stuff we've been through recently. But because you are stubborn and refuse to turn from your sin, you're storing up terrible punishment. It doesn't matter if you acknowledge the sin if you still refuse to turn from it and you still are stubborn. You can acknowledge it and say you hate yourself and say, I'm miserable because of it. But if you keep on doing it, you're this verse.
Yeah, it doesn't change that. You've done it, and there it is. It's still sin deserves. We'll get to this later, but sin deserves death. Sin deserves punishment. And you're like, oh, I'm using the same analogy over and over, but I hit my brother. So, yep, I hit him. Oh, good, that's dealt with now. I've confessed, right? So, no, you still deserves punishment, right? There's still a consequence there. Yeah, you're still just piling it up. Remember, the first 3 chapters here are condemnation. This is why we are guilty before God. There's no hope in these. That comes later. That's going to come later on in Romans. The hope aspect. This is where we stand before God. Every single person. Dale.
I just think, it was Jeff, your uncle, that told me somebody worked at Green Haven anyway. He said there was a prisoner, they were telling him to talk to a prisoner. He said that he was pointing out all the things that the other guys did. He said, and it sounded good. Then he said, and I only killed my wife and she needed killing.
I only killed my wife and she needed killing. There you go. We can
Just
fill in the blank. We like to start with that. It was only.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I remember it wasn't so much, oh, I don't want to be like that guy, but it was like, when I get in a fight with someone's brother, only I'm allowed to hit my brother, not you or anyone else, only me.
Yep. When I do it, it's okay. Right? When I do it, it's... Yes. So some more teeter-totter type theology. Sure, I may have a bit of a temper and curse people out occasionally, but I'm very generous with my time and my money, right? Yes, I do these bad things, but I recognize that, and so I do these good things. That's not how Paul's describing it. It's like, no, we're just talking about bad things here. Putting Flintstones vitamins in with rat poison doesn't make the rat poison healthy. That's the idea. He's like, okay, if you have a toxic thing, like, okay, if I eat this, I'll die. I know. I'll put some good on it. Now it's good. That's stupid. That's how the sin thing is. Like, no, it's just poison. It's still poison. It's still toxic. Now it's just colorful with vitamins. Still will kill you, right? Still going to bring consequences. That's how it works. The teeter-totter idea of like, oh, we just got to balance it out. That's like completely anti-biblical. It does not work like that.
Just tastes a little better going down, but.
So that's kind of like our man-made metric, right? Of like, oh, I can make this, I can balance this out. God's metric is what he puts here. Here's how God is going to judge things. Here's how God is going to judge humanity. Those who do good and live lives fixated on serving the Lord and honoring him, they'll get eternal life. Those who live for self and live wickedly and reject truth from God, well, they will get wrath and punishment. Simple metric. Note, moral man has already been told which group he's in. He led with that. When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you are condemning yourself. For you who judge others do these very same things. You're in the wicked group, people. You guys have done and are doing evil, wicked things. God will punish people who do evil, wicked things with punishment, right? There will be destruction. Did I get to that part yet? We didn't get there yet. He's going to start. That's the next thing. That's coming. If you lived a perfect holy life and served God without problem, well, sure. Eternal life for you. But none of you are doing that. None of you are on that side. So God is going to be fair and just, and you're all on the loser side of that. You're all unjust and worthy of punishment, you moralists. You people who can recognize that there is sin and that other people do it, well, you do it as well. And that puts you on that side of God's estimations. God does not show favoritism. God is just and fair. Sin will receive the punishment it deserves across the board. You see that? There will be glory, honor, and peace from God for all who do good, for the Jew first and also for the Gentile, for God does not show favoritism. There's something a little bit terrifying in the idea of a just God who will give us what we deserve and will not be moved by favoritism, right? Can't be swayed. That's a little bit scary when you think about your life, right? If all the thoughts and intentions of my life were laid out, and the metric being used is there evil? If there's evil, I'm going to punish it, and if there's not evil, I'm going to bless his socks off. Okay, and I'm going to stand before that judge. That's a little bit scary because you just spend 4 seconds thinking back. Have I done evil in my life? Oh no, that ledger's too thick. We're talking volumes and volumes, right? The full Encyclopedia Britannica of Seth's awfulness. And he says, for Jew and Gentile. That's to say, everybody. God's going to be fair. It's going to be fair with everybody. You can be guaranteed of that. Oh no. Oh no, God's going to be fair. And I know where I stand on this, according to Paul, with a moralist. I know that I've done wrong. In verse 12, when the Gentiles sin, they will be destroyed, even though they never had God's written law. And the Jews, who do have God's law, will be judged by that law when they fail to obey it. For merely listening to the law doesn't make us right with God. It is obeying the law that makes us right in His sight. Even Gentiles who do not have God's written law show that they know His law when they instinctively obey it, even without having heard it. They demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts, for their own conscience and thoughts either accuse them or tell them they are doing right. And this is the message I proclaim, that the day is coming when God, through Christ Jesus, will judge everyone's secret life. Transgressing God's law warrants death and punishment. When the Gentiles sin, they will be destroyed. What is the consequence? What's the repercussion for sin? Destruction. It's like, hey, when people sin, they will receive punishment. Or the other translations would say they will perish. Right? They will be punished severely. That's what's coming for them. Ignorance of the law does not equal innocence before the law. You guys know that, right? There's some cultures in the world where it's called honor killing. If a daughter brings dishonor on her family, she wants to date somebody or marry somebody that the family doesn't agree with, or that she just does something that the family's like, man, you're really bringing dishonor in. We can legally kill you in our culture. Well, when that culture comes to the U.S. and says, I killed my daughter, but it was an honor killing. Like, yeah, that's not a thing here. We call that murder. You're going to jail. Oh, but I didn't know. I don't care. That's how the law works. That's how it works in those contexts. It doesn't matter that you didn't know. You did it. and that you're still guilty of it. So he says, when the Gentiles sin, they will be destroyed, even though they never had God's written law. They never had the specific 10 Commandments written out. Well, they still were evil. Against it. They still did evil things. And he's also going to double down and say, and even though they didn't have the specific 10 Commandments written out like on tablets like the Jews, they still had a knowledge of this. And we'll get to that in a second here. But the Jews, we're just going to kind of skip that part of the Jews because the whole next week is going to be about the perspective of the Jews here. But the main summary of that would be the Jews who do have God's law will be judged by that law when they fail to obey it. For merely listening to the law doesn't make us right with God. It is obeying the law that makes us right in His sight. Knowing what's sin and not doing what's sin are two very different realities. And he's going to explore that much more thoroughly next week when he gets talking about the Jews or people that have this specific revelation to God. But then in verse 14, he gets to this idea that no one is actually ignorant of God's laws. Maybe they don't have the 10 Commandments, but in verse 14, even Gentiles who do not have God's written law show that they know His law when they instinctively obey it, even without having heard it. They demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts, for their own conscience and their thoughts either accuse them or tell them they are doing right. Just like we called them the lower light level people, that first group we looked at last week, just like he said, hey, I have put it in you to know that I exist and know that there's these immutable or these invisible qualities about me. I know that that's there within you because I put it there, like an instinct. The birds are all flying south right now for the winter. Instinctually. No one taught them to do that. They're just doing it. God's like, I know that I put that in you guys. Same thing here. It's like, I know that my law, my moral code is written on the human heart. I know that that's there within you because I put it there. They have an intrinsic knowledge, but there is an intrinsic knowledge written on the human heart. So various cultures have various stylizations of these moral laws, but the underlying laws are there. And these are universal truths. Legal killing definitions vary between cultures. Like I said, I can kill, these people are okay to kill in this culture, these ones in this culture. We have different rules about killing. All cultures would have a form that says murder is wrong. There's an unethical taking of human life that is wrong. That's true. We might say, well, self-defense in the U.S. is considered okay. If it's self-defense, we're going to call that not the illegal killing. If it's in war, it's not an illegal killing. If it's right, there's context we would say that. And in other cultures, we say, well, here's other context, the honor killing. This is a context that we're not going to call that murder. That society would still say murder's wrong. They're still going to have an unlawful killing of people where they're going to say murder's wrong. The same with theft. The same with sexual boundaries. There may be variance in the concept, but there are universal moral traits that say, oh yeah, sexual deviancy is wrong. What is the sexual deviancy? Well, the cultures are going to vary because we're messed up. Like, even with people that have no knowledge of who God is, you're going to find murder is wrong, sexual deviancy is wrong, theft is wrong, right? They're in areas. Well, this type of theft is okay. It's okay to steal from your enemies. That's totally fine. Okay. In that same society, though, you're not allowed to steal from everybody. Like, there are going to be those boundaries, and those are universals. You'll find those. Anthropologically, you'll find them. It's like, okay, there is a moral code, and you're going to find it really boils down to pretty similar stuff when it comes right down to it. Theft, cheating, sexual boundaries, reciprocity and fairness, honesty and truthfulness, they're all the same. Right? Societies don't value someone who is not trustworthy, who lies. Don't lie. What if you deceive your enemy, and so you end up tricking him? Some societies are like, oh, that's good. Well, yes, but again, the same society would acknowledge, but you shouldn't do that with your friends and your family, right? They would all acknowledge that there's universal right and wrong. And God's like, yeah, I put that there. I know that you guys have a concept of right and wrong that you can't get rid of because I put it in you. To be human is to know right and wrong. And you're violating that. So even the idea of, oh, but I never had the law. Yeah, but you did. You did have it because I put it in you. So guilty, right? So it's kind of like, they didn't have the law and they're still guilty. And actually they did have the law and they're guilty, right? It's one of those things. Even if they didn't have it, they still did violate it. And by the way, they knew they were violating it.
Because it was in their heart. They had the law in their heart.
Yeah, the law was in their heart. You violated it. And we can see this in that guilt and shame are human universals. Every culture of the world will have, I did something and I knew I shouldn't have. Right? That's C.S. Lewis talks about that quite a bit in his book Mere Christianity. The idea of humans had this idea of what I ought to do. Not what I did, not what I want to do, what I ought to do. And there's like this compelling, I should do this, but I don't want to. Or I shouldn't have done that, but I did. That's the moral law. I have an innate in me, this isn't right, I should do this or I shouldn't do this. That's what Paul's describing here, is this idea. Guilt and shame are human universals. They are evidence that we intrinsically know there are things we ought to do. There is a standard we are not meeting. That's what that says. If I'm not doing something, but I feel that I should be doing something, that's acknowledging there's a standard outside of my own will that I'm holding myself accountable to. That's what Paul's describing here. You have an innate understanding of right and wrong given from me. Now, our consciences are corrupted, right? What we believe to be true is messed up. So it's not reliable, but it's one of those like a broken clock is right twice a day type of things. So like, even if you look at a society, now he says it, even Gentiles who do not have God's written law show that they know his law when they instinctively obey it, even without having heard of it. So again, every culture you go to, they have no concept of the God of the Bible. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They have no idea of Mount Sinai, and yet they're going to stumble upon values that are like, yeah, that's a God value. And they have that. Other stuff's all messed up in the culture, and you're like, oh, they also feel guilty about stuff they really shouldn't. The Iski felt horribly guilty about drinking water right after giving birth. That's a horrible thing, I shouldn't do that. We're like, actually, no, you shouldn't feel guilty about that. You really need to hydrate. You just lost so much fluid. So they had guilt and shame about things they shouldn't, but they also had guilt and shame about some of the things that they should. I was like, yes, you can see it. They stumble upon truth even without anything, because I put that there. It's in their heart. This is the message that I proclaim in verse 16. And this is the message I proclaim, that the day is coming when God, through Christ Jesus, will judge everyone's secret life. Not the good news, right? It's not saying this is the good news that I present. Christ is coming to judge all of you. It's like, no, but it is part of the good news. It's a very big part of the good news. That's why he's leading with this. Part of the good news is, where are we starting from? Where is humanity right now? The message: God, through Christ, will judge sin fully and severely, both the outward sinful conduct and the secret sins of the heart. You guys see how that verse ends, right? This is the message I proclaim, that the day is coming when God, through Christ Jesus, will judge everyone's secret life. Not just the outward conduct, right? We could all agree that there's some things that Caitlin has done. We're like, okay, I can name 3 things. He's like, no, we're not limiting it here. Jesus is like, I'm judging the stuff that no one else knows about but me and Caitlin. And I'm just picking on Caitlin because she's quiet and sweet, so I'm picking on her. But that's forever. You start, again, if you could imagine, what if all the thoughts and intentions of all the evil that you've ever done that no one else knows about were to be put out there for the world? Devastating.
Terrifying thought.
That's just like, what will people think of me? Much less, what should happen with me because of it, right? It's like, here's the message I'm going to proclaim. That's going to happen. Christ is going to come, and he's going to know all the secret wrong that's ever been done, and the public wrong, and there will be judgment based on that. Both the outward sinful conduct and the secret sins of the heart. Go to Proverbs 24, verse 12. I believe I put it down there.
Yep.
Proverbs 24, verse 12. Don't excuse yourself by saying, look, we didn't know. For God understands all hearts, and he sees you. He who guards your souls knows you knew. He who guards your soul knows you knew. He will repay all people as their actions deserve. I just didn't know. Liar! I was there with you. I saw that moment of hesitation. I saw you defy the conscience that I put within you. I know what you did and why you did it and where your heart was in that. Dang it. You're right. Again, kind of terrifying, right? If you just picture yourself standing in that context, someone who knows what you did, knows why you did it, and is going to be like, bam, proven. And you're like, yes, you're exactly right. I have no escape route here. Again, I've been doing a lot of Iski illustrations today, but one of the ones that stood out to me, there was an issue of adultery, attempted adultery. Someone had come to a widow's house. Her husband had died recently. Someone had come to her house at night. It's a jungle village. There's no lights or anything. Someone comes at night, stands outside a little thatched hut and says, hey, how about I come in there? And she's like, no. And pushes him out. And the next day, she's like, hey, this person came. It was this guy, named a guy. This guy came to me in the night and was propositioning me, which society is like anti that. And he's like, where's your proof? You're just making accusations. The whole country like, well, we can't do anything. We don't know. Right? So he was able to bypass any consequences because like, there's no evidence it was me. I'm innocent because you can't show anything. It's just you saying that I came by, but there's nothing there. Not what's being described. It's like, no, I know it was you 100%. Here's the video of you. Here's like all the evidence is there. Guilty. We do a lot of our life. We're able to hide a lot of things, and people can. I'm pretty well. I'm a pretty good guy. People think I'm a pretty good guy. It's like, no, not in this judgment. We're going to zero right in. I'm going to know everything about you, and you are going to come up so short. And it is a day of judgment. Christ will judge everyone's secret life. But I thought Jesus said he didn't come to judge sin, right? No, we're not supposed to judge. And Jesus didn't come to judge. Quick, right? That's easy response to that. Passage we go to for that, John 3, verse 17. Jesus talking. God sent his Son into the world not to judge the world, but to save the world through him. Oh, that's great. Thanks, Jesus. Forget this stuff we just looked at in Romans then, right? Jesus didn't come to judge the world. He came to save the world. Whew. I was getting nervous there. I almost thought, no, right? There is no judgment against anyone who believes in him, but anyone who does not believe in him has already been judged for not believing in God's one and only Son. The idea that, Christianity is not about judgment, it's about love. No, it's about impending judgment that we totally deserve, and despite that, God has acted in love and He's offered something for us. Judgment of sin is coming, and moral people deserve that judgment. It's the case that Paul is making. There is judgment coming, and all you people who are morally upright, you deserve it just like anybody else. Possibly more so, because you're sitting there condemning other people. So it shows an awareness on your part more than the other group we just talked about. Jesus offers an opportunity for salvation from this rightful judgment. He never denies its reality or its deservedness. Right? Jesus is saying, I've come to offer salvation from the judgment that is coming and is deserved. That doesn't negate the reality of there's judgment coming and it's deserved. Right? We lead with, Jesus loves you. He saved you. From what? From, it's things. You're a little bit not quite there. So, no, we're horrible. We're awful. I had one of my teachers at Bible school, he said, we picture the fall of man like we were with God and we fell. And now we're not perfect. He's like, no. We're talking Empire State Building level fall. It was a fall with a splat. Like, how deserving of judgment are we? 100%. We deserve sin. We do sin. We deserve judgment. And we'll get to the good stuff later on. But
like a King Kong fall from the Empire.
yes, that's the type of thing we're doing. So when we're talking about where does humanity stand, where does a morally upright person stand before God? Splat on the sidewalk? No, not on the same level, right? Deserving of judgment.
It's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not. It's quite unsettling. Jesus came to save us because we desperately need saving. We are guilty and we stand before God with no excuse. Did you guys see that in verse 1 there? You may think you can condemn such people, but you are just as bad and you have no excuse. Same thing he said to the first group. You guys have rejected God and you have no excuse for it. You guys have rejected God and you have no excuse for it. Yeah, nothing. It's not there. Again, it should be a bit unsettling, but in a good way, because we know the rest of the story here. So I'm talking to a group of people. This isn't like a big mystery, but we do need to grasp this. We need to get in our heads. It can't be overstated how essential these truths are to the gospel. The absolute unworthiness of man is the basis for understanding the goodness of God. We have to grasp that we are lost, we are cut off from God, we are sinful, evil people who deserve to be punished. Yeah, but I'm not like that guy. That doesn't means. What are you talking about? That's so stupid. No, Seth, you absolutely deserve hell and punishment forever to be cut off from God, because that, just like everybody, you're just as bad as all these other folks here. Failure to recognize our sin will lead to failure to recognize God's offered salvation. If we don't get how utterly lost and how utterly evil we are, like each of us inside, the rest of this doesn't have weight to it. It doesn't have punch. Like, yeah, it's a nice thing. Oh, Jesus loves me? Cool. I'm a really lovable guy. I'm glad he loves me. My mom loves me too. That's not what we're talking about. No, this is someone who should be sending me to hell years ago. Like, the fact that I'm even here is defying the rationale of this. Much anger and confusion directed towards God stems from a rejection of these simple truths. God sends people to hell. He must be a big mean God. No, I'm not. That's showing I'm not understanding where I am and what I've done and what my true nature is. If God is mean for doing what's right, no, that doesn't make any sense. Right? I don't. Life's going well for me right now. I don't need God. I don't need Jesus because I'm doing fine on my own. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not doing fine on your own. You're actually totally cut off, and you're living this little bit of grace period where God's like, please turn from what you're doing. I'm withholding the wrath that should be. It's like there's a whole piano of wrath hanging over your head that I'm like keeping off of you so that you'll repent. Don't think you're okay right now. You're so not.
Walk out from underneath it.
Yeah, but I'm okay, right? I'm all right. That's not an option. But can't get out of it.
Walk out from underneath it is an option if you walk into
Sure.
him.
Call for someone to save you. Yes, you're in a bad place. So that's what's being presented. Again, more condemnation upon condemnation. Here's one group that's condemned before God for these reasons, and here's another group. Oh, maybe they bypass it. No, they don't. They're thoroughly as condemned as the first group. And then next week we'll look at, well, surely God's chosen people can't be lumped in with these confused, helpless people, right? So you're talking about kind of still a fairly lawless group, right? Gentiles. Well, us Jews, though, you're not going to lump us in with them, are you, Paul? Because, I mean, we actually are God's chosen people, and we have this whole system of specific things. We're not the same, right? It's like, yeah, I got a message for you guys, too. I'm going to show you where you fit in the deserving of judgment, not deserving of judgment discussion here. That'll be the next week. We'll be getting into that. But I really want us to appreciate the severity with which humanity is condemned before God. Not you got a smudge on your nose there. You're not quite fit to go into the fancy party. It's not what we're talking about. Absolutely 100% condemned before God on every count, in every way. No ifs, ands, or buts. There's been no one standing before God who has rejected his son saying, actually, God, yeah, but... It's like, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm a horrible, awful person who has done horrible, awful things, and I totally deserve to live cut off from you forever because that's who I am. I cannot be with you. I'm awful. That's where we want to view ourselves. And then it's like, whoa, what do I do? What do I need? I don't have anything to offer here. Good. Now we're asking the right questions. Now we're thinking the right thing because that's what this is all about. Humanity is in this place, so now what? Good question. The Romans is going to work into that. How do we get out of this? Because that's a pretty, depressing story. The story's supposed to have that hero's journey crescendo. Ours is just like, loser, flatline, straight. Awful, awful punishment. It's like, that was a bad story. It's really depressing. Yeah, well, it's not over. We're starting. But that is where humanity is. Any thoughts or questions on this passage so far? The second group, Paul is listing out their condemnation, the rationale for it, where we stand.